All right, we are live in beautiful sunny Florida, and today, fight fans, we're going to be breaking down UFC 216, Ferguson versus Lee in Las Vegas, Nevada. And speaking of Las Vegas, Nevada, I want to start this video out by saying all thoughts go out to anybody affected by those very cowardly, terrible actions that took place this past weekend. So thoughts goes out to all the people that were affected by that in one way or another. So, but yeah, man, we do have a card to break down here for you guys, and I'm also going to be touching on Bellator 184 as well, because believe it or not, I actually have more bets on this Bellator card than I do for the UFC. Just two plays for UFC 216, and then I got three for Bellator 184. So five total plays for this weekend. Plays for the last card in Japan. I managed to pull off plus 2.71 units that night, but I did lose I did lose a unit on the following night with I had a two-leg parlay with Lorenz Larkin and Adam Piccolotti, and they both ended up losing, so minus one unit there. So the last weekend of fights we just had, I had plus 1.71 units. Obviously looking to have a bigger night than that here. So let's go, man. Let's start out with UFC 216 here. In the first fight of the night, we got Matt Snell minus 115 taking on Marco Beltran plus 105. So, man, a lot of people don't know this, but one of the biggest bets I'm ashamed about, one of the worst plays I ever made was Matt Snell versus Rob Font. I took that shot on Matt Snell against Rob Font. I know you guys are calling me crazy, but man, Matt Snell has skills, man, and I really just kind of underlooked the fact that he's going in there against Rob Font is a top 15 bantamweight, man, and I figured Matt Schnell, he's a pretty big guy. He's almost the same height as Rob Font, but you could tell it was two different weight classes in there. And I'm still high on Matt Schnell's skill set for sure, but that last fight was a little sketchy for me, just the way he was knocked out there by Hector Sandoval. Now, Hector Sandoval is a dude who does hit incredibly hard, but still, he was mounted, ground and pounded out by a flyweight, and that's something we really don't see. Those hammer fists, like I said, Hector Sandoval packs power, but that was still a little sketchy for me. So I do like Schnell here. I think he has the much better skill set. Last time out, Marco Beltran showed virtually no takedown defense nor get-up game against a newcomer there. So Matt Schnell, he's a real good wrestler training down at ATT. I know he's good friends with Dustin Poirier. I know he's getting him ready for this fight. I think the wrestling of Matt Schnell will probably be key here. I see him landing a bunch of takedowns, and I also see him probably landing a submission later in the fight. Now, the chin problem is the reason why I am staying away from the minus 115 here. I thought the odds makers opened it up correctly at first with Matt Schnell around minus 190. So obviously I see a little value, but I'm going to stay away here. I told myself I would need plus money to bet danger here. So although he is the pick, I am not betting him. However, I do say he's going to land takedowns in this fight, and I do say he's going to land that submission, and the price is pretty good on him. So I do indeed have Matt Schnell in my DraftKings lineup. So I like Schnell, and I'd like him to get a submission either late in the second round or early in the third round. So moving on here, man, we got Brad Tavares minus 160 taking on Leites plus 150. I've had a lot of success betting Leites fights, whether it was against him, for him. You know, I had Jotko against Leites. I had Leites against Alvi. I had picked a submission prop. I bet on Leites wins by submission against Chris Camozzi. I got that at like plus 350 or something wild, and that was one of my favorite plays I ever hit. Here, though, man, Brad Tavares is a guy I actually just recently cashed on, as well as an underdog to Elias Theodoro. So two guys that I've had success on, but I like Brad Tavares here, and I actually think there's a little bit of value on him at minus 160. I think Leites, he's a bit past his prime, man. I do give him credit for working on his striking. He has improved his striking a good amount here, but he's outgunned by Brad Tavares here still by a good amount. Obviously, he's going to want to look to get it to the ground. He's not really a great wrestler, and Brad Tavares has excellent takedown defense. I actually think if somebody was going to take down Brad Tavares, I think Elias would have had the better chance of utilizing that game plan against Tavares than Leites did. If it does get to the ground, it's going to get a little sketchy. But I think this fight stays standing, and I think we see a nice, clean Brad Tavares 30-27 victory here. I think he outstrikes Leites here. He's the better striker. He's going to keep it on the feet. Knockout wouldn't shock me a whole lot. I'm picking a decision, but you never know, man. I do have Brad Tavares in DraftKings, and since I only have 2 plays on this card, man, I'm really, really debating a Brad Tavares parlay with somebody later in the card. I'm not entirely sure if I want to do that yet, but I see value on Tavares here at -160. I just think this fight is his to win, man. So I got Brad Tavares, and I'll say 30-27 decision. Moving on here, man, we got Magomed Bibulatov -600, taking on John Moraga +500. It's a little crazy to see a guy like John Moraga, who's been an established top 15 flyweight for a very long time now, be +500 against a sophomore appearance fighter here in Magomed Bibulatov. But that just shows how talented this Russian kid is. Magomed impressed the hell out of me last time out against Janelle Lauza. I know this is a huge step up from Janelle Lauza, but if this was prime John Moraga we were talking about, I think this is an even money fight. But John Moraga, not only has he been talking about retirement, the skills, the speed, and speed is something that you don't want to go away at flyweight, but it's all been regressing for him, and I think Magomed is getting better every single fight. I think he decisions John Moraga here. I'll give Moraga the benefit of the doubt. I'll say he lasts the full 3 rounds, but I think it's a beatdown. I think we're looking at something like a 30-26 decision here for Magomed Bibulatov. I still am thinking about parlaying him up with Brad Tavares. It's somewhere around -110 for that parlay. Really thinking about that. Probably going to pull the trigger after this video. Who knows? But I do like him. I don't have him in DraftKings just because I don't really see a finish here. I think he decisions John Moraga. A finish would slightly shock me, but I got Magomed here, and I'll say 30-26 decision. I think the striking, I think he's going to be too much on the feet. Think he can also land takedowns as well. So moving on, we got Walt the Big Ticket Harris -320, taking on Mark Godbeer +290. I think this is another showcase fight for old Walt Harris, man. Walt Harris is a guy who I've had my money on him for a while now. Ever since that Cody East fight, he impressed the hell out of me. I want to say I've bet on Walt Harris every fight since that Cody East fight. So he beat East. Shamil, I picked Walt Harris in the Shamil fight, but I didn't bet him. I bet him against Chase Sherman, and I bet him against Asker. So I did win on Walt Harris in the last 2 fights, and something's telling me to stay away here for a 3rd time in a row just because the line isn't as good as it has been. Even in the Asker fight, I got Harris at -210. If I could get -210 here, I would take it. It actually was -210 at one point, but I missed out on it, man. So I'm happy to pass here at -320. Mark Godbeer he's a jobber. He's one of the bottom of the barrel heavyweights, European heavyweight, who has power in his hands, but not much else to go along with it. He just kind of looks for those big bombs, and he just looks to put people away early, and he throws himself in harm's way as well, and I think that plays into Walt Harris's game here. I think Walt Harris is going to land something huge, and Godbeer knock him out in the 1st round. So pretty simple breakdown here, but I think Walt Harris lands a big shot pretty early with the aggressiveness of Godbeer. Walt Harris, huge, athletic, powerful guy. I think he puts him down with relative ease. So I got Walt Harris round 1 knockout. No bet, but I do have him in DraftKings. So I like Walt here a lot, man, but something's telling me to stay away at -320. Now, full disclosure, I've had an extremely busy week. As you can tell, this is live on a Friday, something I never do. So I've just been, I've been a busy guy lately, man. This woman who I had worked with had recently got let go. So they've had me come in and cover all her shifts. So I didn't have the most time in the world. I did not do tape on either of these women's fights. So I don't know what to tell you guys. I didn't do the tape. I can't give the proper breakdown here. Poliana Botello -140 taking on Pearl Gonzalez +130. Pearl lost to Calvia last time out. Props to her. She made it to the third round in her debut against a very, very good fighter. Poliana Botello is I've heard of her I've heard that name for a while now. I think she's I believe she's a skilled fighter. I watched tape on her a long time ago, but I can't recall too much. So I can't say too much, but Poliana is the -140 here. I wasn't entirely impressed with Pearl Gonzalez's skill set. So just for the sake of it, I'll go with the -140 favorite here in Poliana, and I'll say decision. Moving on to the next fight, man, this is an awesome fight, and I'm glad I'm staying away from it as well. We got Lando Vanetta -190 taking on Bobby Green +175. So originally going into this fight, like before the odds even dropped, I'm like, all right, Bobby Green went to a split decision with Rashid Magomedov, so maybe the odds makers will only make him a very small favorite here, and maybe I can catch a nice Lando -140, -150. It's not what happened, man. Bobby Green was actually a +200 at one point, and that made me think, do I want to bet on Bobby Green here, man? Because Lando Vanetta lost last time out, and Bobby Green's a very tough, experienced veteran, so I think he can make it a tough fight for Vanetta. But I decided to pass. I just want to watch this fight. I think it's kind of going to be kind of hard to tell um, if Lando is ready for this kind of opponent or not. I know Bobby in his prime was the motherfucking man. He was real good, but obviously father time has taken its toll on him. He's not quite the same guy. Doesn't have quite the same speed. He still does stupid shit in the octagon after all these years, paid for it against Poirier. And I think he gets knocked out here as well, man. I think Lando Vanetta finishes Bobby Green here. And I'll say in the second round. I was thinking about I was looking at a couple props in this fight because I really only see it going two directions. I really only see a Bobby Green decision or a Lando Vanetta knockout. So I was just thinking about hedging those two props for the hell of it. Vanetta KO is +265, and Bobby Green decision is +275. So I was thinking about that, but I decided to kind of just pass, and I just want to play this week clean. But I mean, those are a couple props I would say aren't bad ones at all. If you guys, any of you guys out there like those, I would say go for it, man. But I got Lando here, man. I think Lando's legit. I mean, that knockout he got on John McDessie. I know John McDessie is a guy who's also not that great, not in his prime either, but still a tough guy. Not quite Bobby Green, but still a tough guy. So I think Lando can make something happy here and put Bobby Green away. I'll say second round, but I'm passing on this fight altogether. I don't have Lando and DK or anything. So yeah, man, I'll say Lando round 2 KO. So moving on here, we got Tom Dukanwah -150 taking on Cody Stamann +140. Now I know this fight originally opened at like even money in some European books. I wasn't really a whole big fan of that, but then once Cody Stamann got to the +150, +145 range, I started to get real interested because I do indeed favor Cody Stamann to win this fight. I think the wrestling is going to be the key here, man. I'm not completely convinced Tom Dukanwah has the takedown defense to stuff a real good guy in Cody Stamann. Cody Stamann went out there against Terrion Ware last fight on short notice and looked real good. And Terrion Ware is a good striker as well. Not quite the striker that Tom Dukanwah is. Tom Dukanwah can absolutely put lights out on anybody in the division. He's got real big power for 135. But I think Cody Stamann, real strong wrestler, real good cardio. He can keep it up for 3 rounds. You know, we saw Patrick Williams. He had success with a takedown early in the Dukanwah fight, but he wasn't able to hold him down, and he wasn't able to make use of it because his cardio was so piss poor. Cody Stamann is a guy who trains extremely hard. He's in his prime, very young guy. Getting better every fight. So I think he can land the takedowns here on Tom Dukanwah and keep up the pace. And I think this is going to be a real big learning fight for Tom Dukanwah to, work on that takedown defense. And I'm not saying he has terrible takedown defense. I just think it's not going to be enough here. It speaks to how high I think of Cody Stamann. I think he's a very good fighter. I went big on him in his debut as well against Terrion Ware. So love Cody here. I took 1 unit shot on +145. I might actually and put another unit on it. But honestly, it shouldn't be scaring me away, but just the fact that it seems like so many people are on Cody Stamann here as an underdog, it's kind of making me want to not go too big, because sometimes, more often than not, when so many people are on the same dog, sometimes it doesn't come to fruition. So, but I want to have something on it, so just one unit there at plus 145. So let's go Cody Stamann, and I got him in a 30-27 decision. So here comes the biggest play of the weekend. We got Dariush, who's minus 215 now, taking on Evan Dunham plus 195. Now, Evan Dunham is a guy I want to give all the credit to in the world, because he's one of the guys late in their career that I feel has actually progressed and has been adapting with the newer wave of fighters. I think Evan Dunham is still a very good top 25, I'd say, 155 pounder. He can still go on there and beat a lot of good guys. I mean, Rick Glenn was a little outsized in that fight. He was short notice, but we know how good Rick Glenn is now, and Evan Dunham handled him pretty well. But Dariush is a real savage of a fighter here. So let's just pull up Dariush's record right here, man, because I feel Dariush, he's always, his only losses, I feel like he's always winning them before he loses. I believe he's got 3 losses. He's 14. Okay, yeah, he's 14-3. Now, he was winning that Edson Barboza fight. 100% he was winning that fight, and I actually took the shot on him there. He was winning that fight, got caught by a knee. He was outstriking the shit out of Michael Chiesa. Chiesa got his back, and we know how good Chiesa is when he gets people's backs. And then the Ramsey Nijum fight, which I think, no, that wasn't his debut, but early in his UFC career, this was 3 years ago. This is a much younger Dariush. He got knocked out by Nijum, but he was having success early. So I feel like Beneil is always winning the fight, man, and then something happens. Evan Dunham, I'm not sure he's a guy capable of making something like that happen. He doesn't really have a lethal finishing skill set like Michael Chiesa does with his back taking and chokes and just his grappling altogether. And Edson Barboza with his, obviously, I don't even have to say it, his amazing striking and lethal finishing ability. Evan Dunham doesn't really have that, man. He's just a solid guy who wins by decision most of the time. He's on a 4-fight win streak, all 4 decisions. Rodrigo Dam, Ross Pearson, Joe Lozon, Rick Glenn. Decisioned all of those guys, man. So the last finish Evan Dunham actually got, it was a TKO injury against Nick Lentz. His last real finish was a submission over Efrain Escudero back in 2010. So I think Evan Dunham is tough enough to probably make maybe 1 or 2 of the rounds close, like have us all going, maybe Dunham might have won that round, but I think Dariush comfortably wins all 3 rounds, in my opinion. Evan Dunham, I think he can hang in there and not get finished. I think he can have a couple moments, but I think Dariush is just levels above. The striking is a big difference, in my opinion. Even the wrestling, I think Dariush is the stronger wrestler. And the grappling, I think Dariush is the better grappler, man. So I like the spot a lot, man. I think Dariush, he's got more fight left in him. He's in his prime, unlike Dunham. He's got a higher ceiling, and I think the skills are more superior. So although I do think Evan Dunham is a very tough guy, and I do appreciate the kind of resurgence he's had in the last couple of years, I think this is where the win streak ends. Dariush is too many levels of awesomeness. I think he's gonna go out there and out awesome Dunham, because Dariush is a very exciting fighter to watch, and I think he's gonna go out there and do some fun things to Evan Dunham. Knockout wouldn't shock me, but I'll go with the decision. I don't have Dariush in DK, just because I feel like a decision is really likely, but the big bet is 3.5 units in a 2-leg parlay with Dariush and somebody later in the card. You can probably already guess who it's going to be, but I like Benny, man, like him a lot. So moving on is the other women's fight. Didn't do tape for it. We got Kalindra Faria minus 190 taking on Mara Romero Barella plus 175. I see a lot of people betting on Faria. I see a few people even have her in DK. like I said, didn't do tape, so I'll go with the minus 200 favorite in Kalindra Faria. Also, they're both debutantes as well, so we'll never know, man. Moving on though, we got this fight is this fight's very fun on paper. We'll see if it comes to fruition, but we got Fabricio Werdum minus 245 taking on Derek the Black Beast Lewis plus 225. This is kind of a situation of puncher's chance, in my opinion. I think Fabricio Werdum is better everywhere. I think he's more athletic. It's just a matter of whether or not his chin can hold up if Derek Lewis hits him with something. I think Fabricio Werdum can land takedowns on Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis doesn't have the best takedown defense. He's got a good get-up game, but I'm not convinced that kind of, because he doesn't really have a technique get-up game. His get-up game is, I'm strong as fuck and I don't feel like being on bottom anymore, so I'm just going to get my ass up. I don't think he can pull that shit off against Fabricio Werdum. Fabricio Werdum is just a wizard on the ground, and Derek Lewis is nowhere near that level of wizardry of Fabricio Werdum. So I think Fabricio can land takedowns and hold him down on the ground. I also think Fabricio Werdum is the much better striker and can outstrike Derek Lewis, but that's obviously not the game plan I would like to see Werdum implement here. I'd like to see him take Lewis down to the ground, although I am going to be rooting for Derek Lewis in this fight. I want to see him get that knockout. I'm not a very big fan of Fabricio Werdum. As a fighter, yes. As a person, no. But that's a conversation for a different day. I do have Fabricio Werdum, and I do have him by decision here. And I actually was looking at Fabricio Werdum wins by decision prop, and that's a prop I've played before. I played Fabricio wins by decision against Travis Brown in their second fight, and I won that. Just because I don't feel like Fabricio has a whole lot of finishing ability for a heavyweight, and Lewis is a durable guy. He got knocked out a couple times, but against huge power punchers. Fabricio Werdum is not a huge power puncher, so my pick's Fabricio decision, and the prop is plus 200. So I wouldn't tell you guys to take that or anything, but I don't hate it at all. But I got Werdum via decision. I'm rooting for Derek Lewis, though, to get that first round knockout. But moving on to the co-main event of the evening here, we got Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson minus 1150 taking on Ray Borg plus 950. So you guys already know I'm going to be picking Demetrius Johnson just because that's the way these Demetrius Johnson fights go. And he is the second half of my Beneil Dariush parlay. So I got Beneil and Demetrius 3.5 units at minus 172 to win like 2.04. I broke this down. I broke this fight down last time they were scheduled. I'm really not interested enough to do it again. But Ray Borg is a guy who's getting better every fight. I love that he went to Jackson's, mixing things up. He's learning all kinds of new skills, and he is a top 5 flyweight. One doesn't simply beat Jussier Formiga, man. Ray Borg's a talented dude, but I mean, is it not clear by now that it's DJ and the rest? So I think Demetrius Johnson is better in every single aspect, and I don't really see this going any other way than a DJ win. I think he finishes Ray Borg. I do think he finishes him. And, the under's at 4.5 rounds. It's minus 145. I don't think that's too terrible. I'd probably need some I'd probably need some plus 110 for that. But I do think he finishes him. I'll say Demetrius second round TKO. But I think I wouldn't be shocked by a decision. I was so high on Demetrius Johnson finishing Tim Elliott. That was one of my first ever 5-unit plays was the Demetrius Tim Elliott under 4.5, and obviously that went 5 rounds. That sucks. So I'm not really in the business of playing Demetrius Johnson unders anymore, although I do think he finishes here. So I'll say Demetrius Johnson finishes Ray Borg on the feet. Round 2. TKO for Demetrius Johnson. They're really not a whole lot of interested in that fight, but thank God we have a beautiful main event here. We got Tony Ferguson minus 245 taking on Kevin Lee plus 225, and it's kind of blessing in disguise that I wasn't able to do this until Friday, because obviously all that, if you haven't heard, all the weigh-in stuff that just happened, Kevin Lee He waited until the very last second to weigh in. He weighed in at 156. Obviously, in title fights, you have to be right on weight at minus 155. So they said if the doctors clear him, he has another hour to lose the 1 pound. Doctors cleared him, and he got back on the scales an hour later and weighed in at 154.5. So he made it, but really, man, at what cost? That this whole thing made me a little bit less confident in Kevin Lee. I was still going into this video picking Tony Ferguson ever so slightly, just because I feel like that's the smarter pick here, and I want to make the smart picks that I think are going to win. Um, Now I feel more comfortable about it. So I do have Tony Ferguson here, but not by much, man. I still think the line's inflated, even with the whole weigh-in thing. I don't think Kevin Lee should be plus 225 here. So, I mean, in my opinion, the smarter money, the smarter place to put your money, I should say, is Kevin Lee at plus 225 as opposed to a Ferguson minus 245. So, um, I think in the feet, Tony Ferguson. No, I'm really interested to see this fight play out on the feet, man, because neither guy has really been known for their striking a whole lot. Tony Ferguson's pretty unorthodox, but isn't the greatest in the world. And Kevin Lee, his striking's improved, but it's still not the greatest in the world too. So I think honestly, if either guy drastically improved on their striking, I think whoever improved on their striking can win this fight, man. But I think if anything, maybe that'll be Kevin Lee, just because he's been in the game a lot less longer than Tony Ferguson. He has more room for improvement, in my opinion. Tony Ferguson, he's another guy who's been in there for a while now. Actually, won like tough 12, I think. But and I think he's like 32 years old. Obviously, he's taken a lot of punishment. He trains super hard, so maybe Tony Ferguson already had his last hoorah. Another thing to think about, not a lot of people are talking about him, man. This is like a year-long layoff for Tony Ferguson. His last fight was RDA over a year ago. I know he was scheduled for a few times, but still, is ring rust going to be a factor? Kevin Lee's been in there super active, man. So I don't know. I think Tony Ferguson, I think with this fight being 5 rounds, I think his cardio will hold up better, and I think he can probably make something happen on the ground and get Kevin Lee to tap out there. So I'm picking Tony Ferguson via a round 3 submission. I'll go with round 3. I was going to go with round 4, but just because of this weigh-in stuff, I'll say round 3. I think it happens sooner now. So I got Tony Ferguson, round 3 submission. I wouldn't advise betting it, even though I know a lot of you guys already are. But I know my man Dan Levy's on Kevin Lee. I know a couple other people on Kevin Lee as well. So I don't know, man. I'm rooting for Kevin Lee here, man. I'm a huge fan of Kevin Lee, and I want to see him win. So I'm rooting for Kevin Lee here. But Ferguson round 3 sub is the pick. So I want to move on to Bellator 184 now, man, because like I said, I do indeed have 3 plays. So first fight of the night, we got Leandro Higo minus 235 taking on Joe Taimanglo plus 215. So Baby Joe Taimanglo, obviously, most of you guys probably know him for upsetting Darian Caldwell, the guy fighting for the title in the main event. He was like a plus 800 in that fight. He got a miracle submission, but that's really all he's known for, man. I mean, he's a guy who has a lot of fights, but he's kind of a journeyman, in my opinion. He's a solid fighter, and he's going to beat a lot of decent fighters, but he's not going to beat real good fighters. And Leandro Higo is a real good fighter, in my opinion. He went on there and lost a split decision to Eduardo Dantas, the champion, in his last fight, 5-round title fight. He killed dudes over in RFA and LFA. Leandro Higo's a real motherfucker, and I think he's going to be way too much here for Baby Joe. I think I'm going to go with the decision here. Finish wouldn't shock me, but I'm going to go with a 30-27 decision here for Leandro Higo, but I'm passing on this fight. I think I don't really want to touch that line of minus 235, but he's a solid pick for me. But moving on, we got Pat Curran minus 155 taking on John Teixeira plus 145. Pat Curran is Pat Curran's a guy I have a lot of respect for. He's had some awesome fights and he's had some real good wins, but I think the time for him is running low. He's been in the fight game since he was like a kid. He's took a lot of damage, had a lot of fights. He's he's been regressing a lot. Now, if you were to look at his record and see his last 2 wins, you'd say he still has it, but he's also extremely inactive. That Emmanuel Sanchez win, that was so long ago. That was his second to last fight, and I think Manny Sanchez has had like 7 or 8 fights since then. And then after the Manny Sanchez fight, he went out and beat Georgi Karakhanyan, who I think Georgi Karakhanyan is a little overrated. I don't think too highly of him, but he did go out there and beat a decent guy, so props to him. Still, man, I think John Teixeira, he's an underrated guy, man. He's 21-2, and if you really were to go look at those 2 losses, he could easily be 23-0. Last fight out against Daniel Weichel, I thought he won that fight. It was a split decision loss, and we all know how good Daniel Weichel is. He's a very good fighter. So I think John Teixeira should probably be 23-0. He's a younger guy. He's only 30. He has a lot of fights, but he hasn't been in the fight game that long. And he's a guy who's actually improving every fight. I wouldn't say Pat Curran's improving every fight. I took the shot on John Teixeira, 1 unit at plus 160. I think he can out-volume Pat Curran on the feet. Pat Curran's always had good takedown defense, but I think Teixeira can absolutely mix that in as well. But I think John Teixeira is a guy in his prime, and Pat Curran's a guy who's not. So I'm going to take the 21-2 guy to upset Pat Curran here. I like the line at plus 160, so 1 unit. I'll go with John Teixeira via a 29-28 decision. So moving on to the co-main event, we got Daniel Straus, who's now plus 100. Daniel Straus is now the underdog, taking on Emmanuel Sanchez minus 110. Just going to come out and say I took 1 unit on Emmanuel Sanchez at plus 172. Wish I would have put more on it now, especially since it's minus 110. He's actually the favorite. But I do like Manny Sanchez here, and I do understand how the line moved so much. Daniel Straus he's a guy that has faced a lot of injuries in his career, and Daniel Straus has had a very successful career. I mean, he's a 2-time world champion for a reason, but I think that Pitbull fight last time out, that was just ugly, man. I know he was coming off a long layoff, but he didn't really look good there at all. Emmanuel Sanchez is a guy who's been looking great. He keeps putting in time at Rufus Sport. He's getting better and better every fight, and the dude's a beast, man. I think he can go out there and outstrike Daniel Straus. I think he can maybe even go out there and take down the wrestler. So I like Emmanuel Sanchez here. I think him and the guys over at Rufus Sport are going to put together a good game plan, and I think he gets this decision here. I'm going to go with Emmanuel Sanchez, 29-28 decision, and 1 unit plus 172. So 2 underdogs in a row. So now the title fight. We got Darrion Caldwell, minus 110, taking on Eduardo Dantas, plus 100. I've always been a huge fan of Darrion Caldwell, and that Joe Warren fight made me an even bigger fan. The way he suplexed him and then finished him with the choke soon after, that was just beautiful. Darrion Caldwell is a beast. He's one of the biggest 135-pounders you're ever going to see in your life. He's one of the best wrestlers in MMA that you're ever going to see. The dude's an NCAA world champion, as in the #1 guy in the world. Darrion Caldwell is a beast. So Eduardo Dantas, he's a beast as well, man. And I love this fight. This might, besides Kevin Lee and Tony Ferguson, this might be the fight I'm looking forward to the most this weekend. I'm just wondering. Well, I know for a fact Darrion Caldwell is going to be able to take down Eduardo Dantas. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is he going to make another mistake on the ground? I know he didn't make a mistake on the ground against Joe Mango. It was more of he went for a shitty shot and Baby Joe caught his neck. I'm just worried he's going to do something stupid here and do something dumb on the ground where Dantas has the grappling advantage. I think Darrion Caldwell needs to work Dantas on the feet, and hopefully he's been working on his striking, and he can land some good shots on Dantas and set up the takedowns with the shots, and then not play it safe on the ground, but just be extra calculated on the ground. Don't take unnecessary risks. Save your cardio in a 5-round fight. Don't make any unnecessary risk where you might get caught with something. I think if Darrion Caldwell can implement that smart game plan, I think he 100% has the skills to not take out, but decision Eduardo Dantas here. I got Darrion Caldwell. I'll say a 49-46 decision here. I think we got a new champ, and I took 1.5 units on plus 105 to win 1.58 units. Did get that dog money on Caldwell. He's minus 110 now, so that's it, guys. I am so fucking winded after talking about both these cards, but I'm super excited for this weekend of MMA. I think it's going to be all kinds of fun stuff. Bellator tonight, and then UFC tomorrow night. Again, I'm sorry for getting this out late, but I'm a busy guy right now. But I came through for you guys. Hopefully, you all see this before the fights. I appreciate all of you guys watching this. That are watching it before the fights. Even if you're watching this after the fights, I love you guys too. So. Yeah, man, that's going to do it for me. Enjoy the fights this weekend.